Okay, big excitement. We got our Aqua Balance Weil-Mclain combination boiler up and running, and it really seems like our boiler works well. So I'll show you a couple interesting tidbits about it and give you an overview how I figured out how it works. I looked at a lot of videos online, and I guess if you're skilled in the art with these things, you know exactly how they work. But for the average person, you know, I'm curious about these things, and I've learned a lot about how these work now, and maybe I'll go through a few of the things I found out and give you a little heads up on these. So let me take the cover off and we'll get into it. Okay, this is the cover off of the beast, and I just want to give you a couple heads up. And again, none of these are complaints, they're just observations. I think it's a pretty cool boiler, and I think they have great customer service. Excuse me. In the manual, they tell you to pressure test the potable hot water and also the heat side before you install it, and I recommend you do. When I pressure tested it, I found on the domestic hot water side, this nut here, this compression nut, was loose. And on the heat side, there's a nut, I think it was on one side or the other of the Grundfos pump here, that was loose. It was like really loose. They're very easy to get to, tightened up without a problem, and sealed without an issue. But it is something I noticed, and they said in the manual to pressure test it, and I recommend pressure test it, just for that reason. Now, one thing I did find though with the manual was very concerning, not very concerning, but you know, just something I went through was the manual that I got with the Weil-Mclain burner was not the most recent manual, and I'll show you the manual right here. The manual that I got basically looked like this. It says to put in this area here, it says to put a check valve in this system. So you have a check valve, and on the other side of the check valve, you know, I'll explain how it works a little bit. You know, you have your mixing valve on the opposite side, on the output side of the boiler. And on the new version that I downloaded, when I started having issues when I hooked it up this way, it says do not put a check valve in the combination boiler. So if you get one of these, by all means download the most recent manual to install these things. What happens is you know, there's a mixing valve in here behind this this panel, which mixes hot and cold water, whatever. But it has a tight shutoff. It shuts off, you know, 100%. It doesn't leak. And when you have a check valve here, and what would happen, I would call for domestic hot water. Somebody would turn the hot water on, and this boiler would warm up. And this loop between this check valve and this mixing valve, you know, the pressure went through the roof. This needle would spin right around here, so it was probably going up to whatever amount of pressure. So anyway, once that happened, there's too much pressure against the mixing valve. It would not open. So I did that once, and I couldn't get it to repeat. I couldn't figure out the series of events to make that happen. Then I finally figured out, okay, it's when I called for domestic hot water first, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I figured out the issue, and I was getting ready to call Weil-Mclain up, which I did. And I downloaded the new manual because I forgot my manual. It was here at the house. And lo and behold, it said, you know, in the latest manual on the internet, it said, don't put a check valve in there. So I didn't. I took the check valve out, and ever since then, it's been running wonderful. I think it's a great little boiler. We'll see. I mean, obviously, you know, when you have it for 2 months, who cares? It better work good. When you have it for 15 years, that's another story. So hopefully in 15 years, I'll still be as thrilled with it. I mean, look at the size of this thing. This is like the size of one of those college dorm refrigerators. And this does, you know, this does your domestic hot water and your heat for the house. So it's pretty cool how small these things are. So now, just to give you a little overview of what's going on here, is you'll see up in here, this is your thermostat, where your thermostat connects to your boiler. And again, this thermostat, you know, you may have 10 thermostats or 10 zones in your house or whatever, but this is just one thermostat connects to your boiler. So what I have set up here, if we pan to the left a little bit, I went through this cross manifold assembly before, and all my thermostats for my house, which I have, I will have 3 of them, I have two of them right now, plus I have a bypass so I can turn this thing on and off. I have them all coming into this cross manifold thing, okay? So that cross manifold, you know, it has an output, and that output goes into this relay, which turns on my pump. And that thing has an output also, and that output actually is the input for your boiler. So all the boiler gets is a, you know, a contact closed or open, basically. It says either turn the heat on or turn the heat off. It does not control in any way it doesn't control any you know, Grundfos valve. It doesn't control any flow valve or circulator valves or circulator pumps, sorry. It doesn't control any circulator pumps, any zone valves or anything. It just makes hot water for either, you know, for domestic hot water or for heat. There is a Grundfos valve, as you can see, a circulator valve, or a Grundfos pump, excuse me, right there. But that's basically just for the the boiler itself. It has nothing to do with your heating for the house. So that would no way, shape, or form be big enough to pump water around through your house. But that's in a nutshell how it works, and I must say it works very, very well. One thing it's set up to do, and I think you can change this, it has priority. So you have a plus and minus button on top, plus and minus bottom. The top is your domestic hot water, the temperature you want that to be. The bottom is, you know, your water going out to heat the house. And that can be anywhere between, I think the heat the house, it can be anywhere between 80 to 180 degrees. I got it set right now, I think to 120 degrees. But anyway, with the domestic hot water, when somebody pulls water, there's a flow meter in this system, and it sees that you're drawing water, which hot water, of course. And once it sees that, it turns the domestic hot water heat for the domestic hot water on. So at that point, you don't get any more hot water for your you know, your floor. And so what you'll do, you'll just circulate. Let's say you had 120 some degree water. You know, you'll keep circulating that water that's in the piping, so it won't stop. But you know, you're not gonna keep that water up to 120 degrees. It's gonna slowly creep down after a while. Then after you're done drawing your domestic hot water, you know, the boiler turn back on, and you know, you'll warm up the water for your, you know, your baseboard heater, in this case the radiant floor heat. So it seems to work rather well. They do have another mode. I have it in comfort mode. I have an eco mode. There is a comfort mode here also. And what that does, that keeps hot water, a little bit of hot water in the boiler all the time. And I think you can set it up to be a little hotter too. The water can go, right now when eco mode, you can only set it up, the hot water can only be 130 degrees. In comfort mode, you can set it up to be whatever temperature. And again, what happens is you have a mixing valve over here, you know, and you know, they recommend to have a mixing valve over here so you can control the amount or the temperature of the water going out, because the boiler's not going to keep it very accurate. It's going to give you hot water, but that mixing valve there should keep the water exactly the temperature you want it. So anyway, it's a pretty good boiler. I think it's pretty nice. I think it's a great price. Again, in 10 years, let's see if it's 15 years. Let's see if I'm still thrilled with it. I think I probably will be. Again, it's a pretty easy install. The directions, the install instructions are fairly clear, except for that check valve thing. So if you do buy one of these things, be sure, and it's a combination boiler, be sure to get the latest you know, instruction manual to install it. So hope you enjoyed my video, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.